Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right into one of the most dramatic and honestly improbable life journeys in modern global history. We're talking about a genuine rags to riches story, the life of Narendra Modi. We're going to explore how a boy born into profound poverty defied some absolutely astronomical odds to eventually lead 1.4 billion people and completely reshape his nation's place on the world stage.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll cover the boy from Vadnagar, his rising through the ranks, leading a billion people, building global influence, his discipline and daily routine, and we'll wrap up with a blueprint for success. All right, Chapter 1, The Boy from Vadnagar, Humble Beginnings in Gujarat.
To truly understand the man today, we really have to look back at his beginnings in 1950s Gujarat. And the contrast here is just striking. We are talking about a childhood spent in a tiny mud house with zero electricity, where a young boy walked barefoot just to sell tea. Now contrast that with the reality of today. He's the leader of 1.4 billion people, flying across the globe as a head of state. It's a monumental leap.
So let's look at the foundational moments that made a leap like that even possible. From the time he was just 6 or 7 years old, he woke up at 4 a.m. to help his father boil water and serve hot tea at the local railway station. But instead of feeling defeated by it, he kind of used it as an education. He listened to travelers debating world politics. At school, he had this incredibly powerful voice and immense confidence in plays. And he spent hours reading about great leaders and monks, becoming deeply, deeply influenced by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. The spiritual calling was absolute for him. By the time he was 17, he actually left home to wander the country. Shortly after an arranged marriage at 18, he left his wife to dedicate his life entirely to society. A traditional family life, that simply wasn't going to be his path.
Moving on to Chapter 2, Rising Through the Ranks, The Path to Political Power. Born in 1950, he left home to discover the world in 1967. But the real turning point, that was 1975. This is a crucial, highly dramatic era in India. The Prime Minister at the time declared a national emergency. Opposition leaders were thrown in jail. The press was censored. So Modi actually went underground. He operated in disguise, constantly changing locations and using fake names. He secretly organized protests and helped leaders escape the police. This dangerous period really tested his courage. It cemented his reputation as a fearless organizer, which eventually paved the way for his rise to Chief Minister of Gujarat in 2001, and then Prime Minister in 2014.
But long before those lofty titles, he really had to start at the absolute bottom. When he joined the RSS, a Hindu nationalist organization, his very first jobs were sweeping floors, cleaning the office, and, once again, serving tea. And he didn't complain. He used this time as the ultimate training ground. Slowly but surely, he earned bigger responsibilities. He traveled the country, met with poor farmers, and learned exactly how to organize massive political campaigns, utilizing that powerful, inspiring voice of his.
Now, his tenure as Chief Minister of Gujarat from 2001 to 2014 is really defined by two starkly different narratives. On one hand, you have incredible development successes. Under his leadership, Gujarat saw rapid infrastructure growth, much better roads, reliable electricity, and massive business investments. He really earned the title of a visionary, development-oriented leader. But on the other hand, just months into his term, the state was engulfed in the tragic 2002 riots. Following a fatal train fire, horrific violence broke out and over 1,000 people died. He faced severe, heavy criticism from many who accused him of not doing nearly enough to stop the violence. And while this drew massive opposition, he relentlessly focused on economic rebuilding, transforming Gujarat into one of India's fastest-growing states.
Chapter 3, Leading a Billion People, Taking the National Stage.
By 2013, his economic record in Gujarat made him the prime candidate for the national stage. Campaigning as a common man, literally a former tea seller, promising good governance, his party won 282 seats in 2014. It was a shocking majority that handed the ruling Congress Party its worst defeat in 30 years. But what's even more impressive is that after 5 years in power, he actually expanded that majority. In 2019, he secured 303 seats. This unyielding momentum is what ultimately set the stage for his historic third-term victory in 2024.
He achieved those massive majorities by rapidly enacting bold promises aimed at tackling corruption, poor infrastructure, and a sluggish economy. We're talking major initiatives. He pushed through the Jan Dhan Yojana, which brought millions of poor Indians into the banking system. He launched Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, a massive nationwide sanitation and cleanliness campaign.
Digital India completely revolutionized how citizens access online services. Make in India aggressively pushed to manufacture products domestically. And during the unprecedented COVID-19 crisis, he managed nationwide lockdowns while overseeing the distribution of free, homegrown vaccines.
86%. Let that sink in for a second. That massive number represents the percentage of India's cash that was suddenly banned overnight back in 2016. In a highly controversial and honestly shocking decision known as demonetization, Modi voided 500 and 1,000 rupee notes to fight black money and corruption. It forced millions to line up at banks and definitely caused significant hardship. But it proved to the public that he was a leader willing to take massive, absolutely unprecedented risks.
And he sold these risks through his unparalleled communication skills. Right after his 2014 victory, he stood before the nation and declared, "This is not just a government change, this is a new hope for India." These speeches aren't just policy updates, they are highly emotional, powerful messages that literally move millions of people and command rock-star levels of cheering.
Which brings us to Chapter 4, Building Global Influence, India on the World Stage.
You know, it wasn't just domestic policy that defined his tenure. It was a massive expansion of India's global footprint. He's visited over 60 countries, building strong strategic relationships everywhere he goes. He's held pivotal meetings with U.S. Presidents Obama, Trump, and Biden, Russia's Putin, and China's Xi Jinping. He secured standing ovations while addressing the U.S. Congress. He became the very first Indian leader to receive the UAE's highest civilian award. And he successfully hosted world leaders at the G20 summit. He aggressively transformed India's global reputation into that of a true emerging superpower.
Next up, Chapter 5, Discipline and Daily Routine, the engine behind the leader.
So how does a leader who is now 74 years old maintain this absolutely relentless pace? Well, the answer is a notoriously strict, completely Spartan lifestyle. He still wakes up at 4 a.m., just like he did back when he was selling tea, but now it's for yoga and meditation to keep his mind sharp. He spends his mornings reading spiritual books and government reports. He consumes only a very simple vegetarian diet with warm water, completely avoiding junk food. And staggeringly, he works 16 to 18 hours a day with virtually no holidays. Because he chose to forego a traditional family life, he's able to dedicate absolutely all of his energy, discipline, and time straight to the state.
And a massive portion of his day is actually spent communicating directly with the public. His reach is just staggering. We're talking 100 million followers on X, 92 million on Instagram, 50 million on Facebook, nearly 27 million YouTube subscribers. He brilliantly uses these platforms to completely bypass traditional media, making sure his vision, his policies, and his personal brand echo directly into the pockets of millions of citizens.
Finally, Chapter 6, A Blueprint for Success, Lessons from the Journey.
Whether you follow his politics or not, this rags-to-riches journey serves as a definitive blueprint. I mean, think about it. He had no money, no powerful family name, and no political background whatsoever. Yet, he achieved greatness. The major takeaway here is that your past does not dictate your future. It requires visionary thinking, an absolute refusal to let obstacles stop you, and quite frankly, working harder than anyone else in the room.
And that leaves us with a final, challenging thought. When you look at the sheer willpower it took to get from a muddy tea stall to the absolute heights of global power, you really have to ask yourself, are you going to let people tell you what you can't do? Will you just wait around for success to happen, or will you fight for it? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.